Hey everybody, it's Pastor Brent. Pastor Mike is with me, and this is going to be raw and real. What do we say this week? I want this message to be,
it's gonna be
no cap, raw, straight up lit. Welcome to a first idea, I guess, that we've really done in a long time. It's a follow-up. It's a little bit more to the message. We started a series this last week called Lake Life. It's an idea I've had for a while, really what it means to be a disciple. So this is what we're going to do. I'm sure this is going to get way more polished as we go on. Maybe I don't want it to be polished, but it'll get a little bit more polished up front. I've asked Pastor Mike to sit in with me this week one of this follow-up of this message, just to go a little bit deeper. This is just for you guys, just to think about maybe the message a little bit more, maybe crawl in our brains as to why we said what we said or did what we did. And it's just for ammunition, I guess. It's just for us to grow in our faith. My biggest fear, Pastor Mike, is always the message to stay there. That we go, okay, that was nice, and we don't really think about it anymore.
Right.
So that's really our attempt here. If you can't beat them, join them, I guess. Everybody and their dog has got a podcast, and that's not necessarily our idea, just to fill your life with more content, but maybe take 10, 15 minutes and go, hey, how did that message speak to me? So I guess, Mike, I'll just ask you a question. This is my first time sitting at the desk where we're recording this podcast, is where we do live in the lobby, and so many people tune in with us. What were people's takes on the message? How did you frame the message to close it down? I know you recap a little bit. I'll be interested in hearing what you said.
Well, first of all, I thought your angle, when you talked initially listening to the message the first time, when you talked about how churches have become a bunch of stadiums full of fans, and then you went into the idea of how we have literally culturally changed this idea of what it means to follow somebody. I mean, I was laughing listening to the message because I'm sitting there thinking, well, okay, on YouTube, I've watched people mow grass. I've watched a guy fix traffic lights, all these random things that pop up in your feed. And you're like, well, that's interesting for a short period. And then, you're after a while, you're going, well, okay, I can't watch him mow another yard or fix another light or do this or do that, all these different odd jobs that are out there. And so you unfollow, move on, and you kind of clean up your feed again. And so I thought that was a great analogy when you talk about that's how most of us view Christianity. That's how most of us view our relationship with Christ. Is we might be interested for a little while. We might be big fans. We might even maybe do the right things for a little while, and then after a while we get distracted, we get more interested in other stuff, whatever. So I thought that analogy in and of itself was really profound, because when we think of the word follow, when we think of following anybody, our mind first goes to social media and not necessarily spiritual things. So I thought that was a huge way to set this up in the first place, just to kind of challenge all of us in our thinking in our spiritual lives.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, and if you didn't get a chance to watch or listen to the message, go back and listen to it. This is just a supplement to that. We don't want to re-preach the message, but, my son's generation, they talk different, and it just kind of cracks me up as a middle-aged guy that I'm like, man, your language and slang and stuff that you say, I don't even understand. And I really do like the idea of following Christ.
Yeah.
The idea of Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, Jesus said to his disciples, if you want to be my disciple, you got to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Mm-hmm. Following is different today. And that's this kind of my angle. And I guess I'll take it a step further if you really want to get in my head. Every video that I watch on YouTube, because I'm a YouTuber now, my son makes fun of me because I used to make fun of him and now that's all I do. Uh-huh. Halfway through every video, they stop and go, you got to subscribe. Yeah. Half of our listeners don't subscribe. And I think of how many people sitting in a church are not really subscribing to really being a disciple of Christ. They're truly a fan. Following is taking it or leaving it. Yeah. And it's you follow Christ in the wins but not in the losses. And the idea of what it means to be a disciple is, I think I have to preach it. I feel convicted about it because we don't want to just preach to a bunch of fans in a stadium of this is great, we can admire Jesus. Mm-hmm. But Jesus is the one that gives us the definition of following him. Yeah. Deny yourself, take up your cross. The idea of embracing suffering. That's not a really great preachable message, but that's what's needed in our lives. And, the idea, I guess, at the end, I don't know if I really went as good as I should have, that Jesus is always worth it. It's worth it. Because we're like, man, Brent, you're just preaching the first week of the summer to, You got to give up everything, and that's it. You can't keep your life and give it to Christ. And that's what I'm going to be after for 10 weeks. Where you're going to be in on that. We're going to just really dive into what it means to be a disciple. Lake life, and that acronym. I think I'm saying that right. Acronym, right?
Yeah.
Lake, LAKE, living authentic kingdom effective. I don't know, for some reason I wrote that down. I'm like, that's what I want in my life. I know that's what Jesus wants for us. That it's so worth it. But it's going to cost you something. And this week, I'm not going to get into the message yet this week as we jump into week 2, but being a disciple will cost you.
Yeah.
And this week, I get into this whole thing of we hate hidden cost. And Jesus was upfront about it. He's like, this is what it's going to cost you. The idea of being a disciple. And I really didn't unpack this, but maybe this is what we think about this week as we're listening to this. We're just wanting to grow in our faith a little more. In the New Testament, what it meant to be a disciple was really 3 parts. And I think I only said it one service. Following Jesus. And that's really in your head. That's a decision to surrender. That's like, I have got to get out of the driver's seat and let Christ guide me. Being changed, though, is in your heart. That's through the Holy Spirit. And then the idea of being committed to the mission of Jesus, being fishers of men. Ultimately, we're going to get there. What it means to be a disciple is just to not grow in your faith, but to fish for men or women. Disciples make disciples. And so it's going to be a really, back to the basics, maybe Christianity 101, if we want to call it that. I don't even like that anymore. Following Christ, what that means to follow Christ is with your head, your heart, and your hands.
Yeah, well, I would this weekend, after listening to the message, my mind immediately went to it, and it may seem obvious, but Romans 12:1, the idea of you're the living sacrifice, that we're supposed to be holy, pleasing, and this is the way we live out the worship in our day-to-day routine. And we think of, I've always liked that verse because we think of worship as obviously what takes place within the doors of the church and singing songs and all those things. And we forget that worship is supposed to continue in our day-to-day lives, our daily walk, our routines, all that. And so that idea of being that living sacrifice, that, it's that reminder that, hey, this is not supposed to be about us. This is not supposed to be about our priorities. That doesn't mean that, hey, you can't go enjoy life. But if you're not living for Christ first and foremost, as you go enjoy your life, there's a problem. And so, like you said, it's evangelism, it's the day-to-day walk, it's your witness, it's all those things that have to come into play when it comes to following Christ. And so many of us, we kind of, like you said many times, we compartmentalize our spiritual lives and our relationship with Christ to where too many of us have gotten really good about flipping a switch on or off, depending on the context, depending on the setting that we're in.
Yeah, I think I brought it up maybe one message. It really wasn't on the screens. It was a scripture, 2 Corinthians 5:17. If anyone is in Christ Jesus, they're a new creation. The old things are gone. The new things have come. And I think ultimately my conviction as a pastor, and I do feel it. I think, we blame everything on COVID, but things have surely changed in our society. I don't want us to have this place full of fans.
Right.
And that's kind of an older thought, the follower fanship thing. There was a book out years ago, and everybody really liked it, but yet it kind of just went away quickly.
Yeah.
And the idea, I feel it in our church, that we have a lot of people that come in here like, man, I admire what the church does. I admire Christians that are they're passionate, they're different. We use our hands and feet to make a difference in our community. But yet when we wake up every day, is it, hey, God, I want you to be glorified in my life today. It's not me living my life, but the decisions that I make, are you glorified in your mission? And that's what I think about. I mean, and people go, well, we're pastors. We're supposed to think that way. Well, we're followers of Christ first.
Right.
And yet I really feel like there is a disconnect where you can almost feel it tangibly. And if you're listening, first off, thanks for listening. We don't know if this is going to gain any traction. We're just doing this as a little bit more for our church family to go, hey, let's not leave the message in one spot. Let's think about it a little bit more. And if you're listening, are you challenged by that? Do you wake up every day and go, wait a minute, I want to be a disciple, and Christ defined it, right? Deny ourselves. We're going to talk about that. That needs to be talked about because that's what we don't want to do. Take up our cross is an interesting kind of angle of total commitment and then following Christ in not only the wins but the losses when we don't understand why things occur the way they do, but we're still going to follow. We're going to understand that Jesus is worth more than anything that we sacrifice. What he has done is amazing. And that, in turn, is how I think we live kingdom, we live living authentic, kingdom effective lives. Living authentic, everybody wants to see somebody living authentic.
Right.
But kingdom effective is, how do we do that? What does that look like? And to me, it is followers fish. It goes back to really the core of our church, that we are called to fish. We are called to make disciples. And I don't know, if I'm honest, I think we do a good job at that and we do a really bad job at that at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. I just think sometimes we come to church, everybody loves our church, and we're like, man, that's good. But yet 3 weeks goes by and we forgot what we talked about. It was a great experience, but with so much information, and here, once again, we're giving you something with more information. How does that change us? And I think at the end of the message, I don't know if I did a good job or not. I tried to just get into the idea of daily surrender. The song, I Surrender All, we use it as a song to come forward.
Right.
And I think it's a daily, the way it was written was a daily, all to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give.
So what, 40
love
times?
And trust him in his presence daily live. And we've somehow used that song just we come forward, we accept Christ, and then we do our thing.
Yep.
Thank God. But it's the daily surrender that makes the difference in the great times, but when the chips are down and bad times come as well, we have to surrender and go, hey, you know what? Everything that we do in our relationship with Christ is worth it because he is worth it. And the angle I used with John Piper, I don't know if I used it I kind of went a certain direction with it, and you could feel people appalled, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. The idea of if heaven had everything that you ever wanted, but Jesus wasn't there, is that good enough for you? And you could feel people, of course we're in church, but that's kind of how we're living our life. Heaven is everything we want.
Right.
And that's really not what heaven's going to be like. It's going to be worshiping Christ for everything that he is and has done, and we can see him face to face. And it goes to our relationship with Jesus, that living relationship with Jesus. If it's authentic, we're going to be kingdom effective. I mean, that's just the way it is. We got to kind of talk about that, because I don't think that's preached really a lot today. We want to fill the stadiums with fans.
Right.
So you don't want to preach on, hey, let's carry our cross and deny ourselves. We want God to make us the best that we can be, and God's that resource that we are, look what we can do, and it's not that. Paul says it best. You just alluded to Paul, Romans. It's all over the place. I'm crucified with Christ, therefore I no longer live. Christ lives in me. We're a new creation. The old is gone, and there's the battle.
Yeah. Well, and you brought it out this week, and I think it's a good point. It goes right with what you were saying, too, about the evangelism side of this, is I think the rub comes in that we're good when it comes to Christianity affecting us. And we talk a lot about our own lives and our own growth and our own relationship, but the rub is always, am I willing to stick my neck out in order to witness to somebody else? Am I willing to be bold enough to put a relationship on the line, to use that influence to potentially lead somebody to Christ? And most of us get caught up in the fact that we have a problem with that, because we want to fit in. We want to be liked. We want to, have that circle of friends, all those things. So we don't want to use the lake analogy, we don't make too many waves, and rock the boat and upset people. But I thought of, back to Matthew 16, you used it this week, verse 26, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? And I think the big key in all of this is that, whether it was last week or any message or any idea, once that idea really sets into our spiritual lives, that life is bigger than the here and now. Life is bigger than our immediate circumstance, and that this is eternity we should be looking at and thinking about those things. It becomes a lot easier to be a lot more bold, because then you're not so much concerned about the consequences of the here and now as much as you are of the eternal consequences.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk forever. Just so many good things that we've said, and I guess our goal here, as we've talked about, is just want it to be short. We don't want to bombard people with too much information. We want people to at least take the message a little bit and put it in your prayer life, put it in your thoughts today. And really, that word surrender was the first week.
Yeah.
This week, I won't get into the message, but my brain is already going, people are willing to pay a high price for something they value. Mm-hmm. And do we value that commitment with Jesus so much that we are willing to follow him? And I think that's everything. Yeah. And that's my prayer. I said it. I'll keep saying it. I'm going to stand before God one day and be held accountable for what I say. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands, hey, following Jesus is the greatest thing that we will ever do. And we've always got to wake up every day and God, hey, I've decided to follow the old song.
Yep.
Not just surrender. I've decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. And if that's our prayer today, man, it changes everything. The idea of following Christ, denying ourselves, taking up our cross. We don't have time to get into, Jesus says, embrace suffering. We hate that. What are you talking about? But the idea of, hey, to live the countercultural life, to not necessarily fear rejection, to not necessarily just, hey, I want to do what everybody else is doing, but I would rather follow Christ because nobody else really knows what they're doing. The blind are leading the blind. Mm-hmm. We all live this, I'm in control of my life. We're not in control of nothing. And so for me to surrender my life and go, okay, God, today I wake up and I embrace the cross. I embrace what you've done for me. It's more than just jewelry around my neck.
Yeah.
It's something that matters, like you talk about, for eternity. And people can go, well, you guys are just talking. That's just... To me, it's everything. It matters. And so we're going to keep sharing it. And for you to wake up today, wake up tomorrow, listen to this today, wake up tomorrow and go, hey, I want to surrender my life. I want to give my life. I want to follow Christ, but it's always worth it. So that's really, if you want to get in my head from week one, that's what I was after. I tried my best to articulate that, but the best of preaching is foolishness if God's not in it. So I pray that God's in it and that we can respond.
Yeah. The last thing I think I'd bring out in this is just anybody listening to this, once again, if you're sitting there going, well, I want to live that kind of lifestyle, but you feel like, man, this is not obtainable, that maybe, as Pastor Brenda said, that, you're listening to two pastors sit here and talk, so you're like, well, it's a different world that they're in than my world and all those things. As he has said many times, a relationship with Christ is like any other relationship. We don't have to overcomplicate it. We don't have to, it's not about getting caught up in rituals and routines, but instead it's a pursuit of, in this case, it's a pursuit of God. And so it's not a matter of, I have to say the right things, I have to do just the right words or just the right formula, but it's saying, God, you know what, I need you in my life, and I'm going to spend time with you, I'm going to seek you out, I'm going to read your word, all of those things in order to draw closer to him. It's going from the fandom idea, the fan sitting in the stadium, to putting on the wedding ring and saying, I'm committed, I'm all in.
Yeah, I think we might even change our verbiage with baptism, because I think we have perpetuated fandom when we're putting on the God jersey.
Yeah.
Fans put on jerseys of their teams, and I think, like you just said, I think it's more of a wedding band analogy. And if you're like, this is unattainable, God's not calling us to perfection.
Right.
Christ went to the cross because we are not perfect and we are all sinners needing saved. The idea of is daily commitment to wake up every day. In marriage, it's a great analogy. You're never going to get it right. It's never going to be perfect every day, but it's a commitment. It's daily commitment. And there's something, I use it in marriage counseling all the time. That's what everybody wants. We want a home of unconditional love where there's commitment there. I don't have to be perfect, but I have to be authentic, and I have to communicate, and I do have to surrender my will. I looked at a couple this week and I said, the greatest thing that you can do this week, and I looked at the guy and said, wake up, and how can I make her happy? What can I do to really prioritize her? And then I looked at her and said, what are you going to do to prioritize him? I think that's what we have to look at in our relationship. Christ has prioritized us. Are we prioritizing him in our lives? Daily commitment, daily surrender. That should be our challenge today. Can't do anything about tomorrow, and you probably screwed it up yesterday, so there's nothing you can do about that. It's right here, not to say a great Kenny Chesney lyric, right here, right now. So that's it, man. This is week one. We're going to get this better. If you are listening and you want to reach out to Pastor Mike, reach out to me and just go, hey, I would love for you to maybe put this in a podcast, do it longer, shorter. We're just going to try something. Again, we've kind of been hesitant to do this because everybody has a podcast, and I don't want just to add more stuff to you, like, well, I got to listen to that too. This is just something for us. We feel convicted about it, to maybe make the message breathe a few more minutes, a few more hours in our day. And as we kind of unpack all of this over the next 10 weeks, and it's going to take longer than that, but we're going to take a lot of time this summer and just kind of, what does it really mean to be a disciple? Lake life. We all want to live at the lake. Well, Christ wants us to live at the lake, live an authentic kingdom effective lives. How do we do that? And I think it's worth it to spend some time talking about it. So Pastor Mike, thanks a lot. Love you guys. Hopefully we'll see you at church this week.
Have a great week.